I'm going to tell you a story about two pickpockets. And the first one of them, he sort of started off not very far away from here, down in the town in fact. And in them days, he used to hang around. He got the, the scruffy hair with the colours in it, the bright colours in it, and a t-shirt with the heavy rock, bands on them, and the jeans with the knees out and the scruffy old baseball boots, And he used to hang around the market and places like that. And he was quite good at this pickpocketing. But he was still at school then. But when he left school, he had no qualifications at all because he didn't take any notice while he was at school. So anyway, he got to earn a living. So what he did was, he bought himself a couple of suits off the peg, some, sort of plain boring shirts and ties, pair of leather shoes. He had his hair cut short, and he started to commute into Birmingham every day. Sometimes he'd go on the bus, sometimes he'd go on the train. And of course, early in the morning when people are catching the bus to work, they're not fully aware, are they? So it was easy pickings. Same coming back at night, all they want to do is get it home, And during the day, he'd hang around the Bullring or, around the bigger stores up there or around the station, perhaps. Anyway, he was making a living for a good few years, actually. And then one night, on ATV Today, there was this item about there was a gang of pickpockets at work in Birmingham, and the police were going to set up a task force to deal with them. Well, in fact, there wasn't a gang of pickpockets, it was just this one lad. But he decided it's time to move. You see, and like, as I say, the way he dressed, he always blended in. He did. Nobody noticed him when he was, scruffy. Nobody noticed him when he was going to work because he was like everybody else, and everybody accepted him. Anyway, what he did was he bought himself he had himself a couple of bespoke suits made. Some really expensive, nice shirts, silk ties, nice shoes. Had his hair styled, and then he went to London. Why not? Anyway, first day down there, he didn't intend to do anything. He just went out to have a look, Down in Oxford Street, he went into one of these big stores. And as he was going round, he saw this bloke, businessman, up at the perfume counter, probably buying something for his mistress, And out come a big fat wallet. Look at the notes of it. And he thought, too good to miss this is. So anyway, he had the wallet. Put it in his pocket. And he was just about to turn, and he noticed the watch. Rolex. I might as well have that as well, so he had that. As he walked away, put the Rolex in his pocket. Then he realised the wallet had gone. I thought, what sort of a place have I come to here? I've been robbed. This is disgusting. Well, he looked round that shop floor, discreetly looked round, and nobody stood out. They all, they're all dressed nicely, they all look like, nobody actually stood out. But then, this one young lady, very smartly dressed, who could have been working for a bank or a solicitor or something like that, it just held his gaze, just that one split second too long. So again, he looked round, and when he got to her, it just held that gaze just that bit too long. She walked out of the store and he followed her. Went into this coffee shop, and he went in and sat down beside her. He said, it was you, wasn't it? I says, what was me? He says, you stole my wallet. I says, oh, it was your wallet, was it? I said, I watched you. He says, you're good. I said, but you're not as good as me. Anyway, they got chatting, and what they decided to do was meet up the next day and go out and prove which one of them was the best. Well, they were both bloody good. You know, in fact, there was nothing between them. They were great. And they had such a good time working together, they decided to, you know, to do it on a regular basis. I mean, it was more fun, you know, having somebody to work with, and not only that, there's somebody to watch your back. So they carried on, and of course, you get two young, good-looking people working together, having fun. They fell in love. They got married. And then the girl fell pregnant. And, well, they were delighted, you know. They'd set up home and, you know, everything was great. And then she gave birth to a bouncing baby boy. And, well, they were absolutely delighted. And like all parents, they looked at this child and thought, whatever he does, he'll be the best. You know, I mean, you know, whatever profession or trade he does, he'll be the best. And of course, he could always come into the family business, as they you know, they decided to, you know, think of it. And anyway, first few weeks, the young lady stayed at home with the child, and he went out and did a bit of work. Well, sort of usual day at the office, as you know, he jokingly said. But he returned one evening, and his wife was distraught. She says, "What's the matter?" He says, "It's the child." He says, "I hadn't noticed it before." He said, "But he don't use his right hand, can't use his right hand. He's got it clenched to his chest like that." And he looked and he said, "You're right. He does, he's always got it clean, you know." I hadn't really noticed. But anyway, they took him down to the hospital and they did some tests. And they couldn't find anything wrong with him. You know, child's normal. Well, of course, they were well off by this time. They were making a good living at this pickpocketing. So they took him to an artistry specialist. They went into this office, and he was a very pompous man, you know, with a brightly coloured waistcoat and a big gold chain with a big gold watch, you know. And, well, even given the gravity of the situation, they sort of looked at one another and thought, yeah, if we met him outside, we soon have that off him. But anyway, he did a few tests. And then he asked the young lady to hold the child up facing him. So she did. And he took his watch and he started to swing it like that. And the child was following it backwards, forwards. And then he started to bring it closer and closer to the child. And as soon as it was in striking distance, that little hand, opened his fist, reached out and grabbed the watch. But when he did, something dropped to the floor. It was a midwife's gold ring.